Welcome to Please Me, the award-winning podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. And welcome to Season 5 of the show. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap, one empowering conversation at a time. Last week, I sat down with Pepper Cat, a legal sex worker, to discuss male loneliness as a growing epidemic and how her work helps people explore hidden fantasies they may be too shy to share with their partners. It was a must-listen conversation that challenges stigmas and opens minds. If you missed it, go back and check it out now. Did you know that podcasts rely on listener support to keep bringing you the content you love? For the best way to support the show, join me on Patreon for ad-free listening, early releases, bonus episodes, and exclusive content. Fill out my new questionnaire on pleaseme.online and leave me your questions so I can answer them on the show. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
I wish couples would be willing to try that. Because I feel like there's this crestfallen guy that wants to just disappear and eject out of the bedroom instead of being like, all right, let's go to plan B.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustral implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
Imagine a world-class graduate education that's accessible, flexible, and designed for career impact. That's Harvard Extension School. Build actionable knowledge and skills in challenging online classes taught by Harvard faculty and industry experts. Explore new opportunities and expand your network with high-achieving professionals from around the world. Part-time learning. Real-world impact. This is Harvard on your terms. Learn more at extension.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hello, and welcome to Season 5 of Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. I'm so excited to be welcoming Jenn Kennedy to the show. We have been going back and forth and finally are here together on this platform, and I'm so excited to be interviewing you today. Jenn is a fellow speaker and podcaster. She is also a sexologist and a licensed marriage and family therapist. She specializes in helping couples with low sexual desire or dissatisfaction And she's been quoted in Redbook, Forbes, Forbes Health, Allure, and others. And she has her own podcast called Pleasure Project, Sex and Relationships. And I am so excited to welcome you to Please Me today. How are you, Dr. Kennedy? And should I call you Jenn?
You can call me whatever. Yeah, it's all good. Then Dr. Jenn, it's all part of the mix. So thank you. It's good to be here. It's always fun to talk to a colleague.
Yes, absolutely. And we were talking earlier because our shows overlap so much in what we love to talk about. And I think it's so important to have many options, right? When it comes to talking about sex and sexuality and sexual health, you're coming at it from a slightly different perspective. I'm a licensed physical therapist and I treat sexual health conditions. So I focus more on the physical aspect of it, focus more on the psychological aspect of sexual dysfunction. But I definitely feel like we are hand in our missions to really destigmatize these conversations about sex. You want to just jump in?
Sure. Yeah. So I find that my referrals as a therapist come in from doctors and physicians. They also come from physical therapists because the mind-body connection is huge. And I also send referrals that way because oftentimes people are having pain or discomfort or dissatisfaction, and it's a matter of needing to work in a physical way. So I find that the two definitely go hand in hand, and it's really important sometimes to just understand where it's originating, and sometimes if they need to work on it emotionally, or sometimes they need to actually work on it physically. So I think both are really important.
I agree with you 100%. And oftentimes people will ask me if I also am a psychologist or a social worker because I am a good listener. And sometimes that sort of puts me in that space because when somebody comes to you with a sexual health condition,
like a good listener on your job.
Exactly. You're not going to just get like the medical aspect of the issue. You're going to get all of the aspects of the issue. And so you're absolutely right. We can refer back and forth to one another, which I think is a beautiful thing. I appreciate the work that you do. And I want to just jump into it. I want to talk about the difference. And you had mentioned in particular that men have issues with this, or issues of understanding this, I should say. What would you say in your own words is the difference between sensuality and sexuality, and why is there a confusion there?
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, people really go towards sexuality, and men in particular think of sex as that act, the act of coitus, the act of penetration, and they don't parse out the sensuality, which I more see as the larger act of what we would consider foreplay, what we would consider touch, and sort of what the mind involves, the larger picture of bringing you in, showing interest, flirting, building anticipation. It is also the quality of touch that leads to non-genital touching. All of it is the sensual part of it, right? It's the part that really titillates the mind and not just the sexual act. And so much of that is actually really enjoyable and really quite compelling, I would say, to both men and women, but women in particular. Women want sensuality. And because sex can be over really quickly and sensuality can be elongated for quite some time, and it's much more fulfilling.
Right? Yes. And when we talk about the difference between men and women and, how a woman needs 20 to 25 minutes of warming up before she's even ready for penetration, right? Because our clitoris, our vulva needs to become engorged. We actually need a hard-on too, right? With the man, it's really easy to determine. They get a hard-on, they get an erection, and it's okay, you're ready, but what about my hard-on? And so we also have to get stimulated, lubricated, and that takes time. So I love that you speak about the whole body, because I often say that the whole body is an erogenous zone. It really is the way that it's perceived by us. And if the perception is sensual touch, then that part of our brain that is perceiving sensual touch, the clitoral area, is going to start to light up, even if it's not the clitoris that's being touched. You want to just jump in there a little bit and explain?
Yeah, I want to say too is that the foreplay starts way before you're in proximity, right? It can start hours or days before. Like if there's flirtation, if you're leaving notes, if you're sexting, if you're touching here and there, if you can turn yourself on even, right? That flirtation can start with yourself in terms of if you're wearing beautiful lingerie, if you're trimming or shaving, right? It's if you're that anticipatory energy that we as women oftentimes have of knowing that you might be having some sort of sexual connection that's coming up, that can turn yourself on and knowing that's coming. But certainly in partner play, having that sort of flirtiness and that playfulness that's going to happen before touch even happens. And then as touch starts to happen, rather than going straight to it, rather than going straight for genitals, having a narrative be built is so much more interesting.
Absolutely. And how do you encourage your clients to build on that sensuality, which is so key for women? Because as we know, the statistics of women's sexual orgasm, right? Only 3 to 5% of women can orgasm from penetration alone. And 95% of women need external clitoral stimulation in order to orgasm. So how do we encourage the men in our lives or our partners to really focus and hone in on that sensuality? Because it's so key for us to be able to get that orgasm gap closed.
Yeah. Okay. So I've heard slightly more encouraging numbers, more like 20%, but still it's debatable. How I encourage them, I like to start with Sensate Focus. I know it's old school, but I do like that intervention because it does train them, especially for couples who haven't had much sex or touch, to slow it way down, to do some exploratory touch outside of genital touching, to do a little warm up, to spend some time. I'm asking them for 10 minutes to touch their partner without a lot of guidance, without genitals being involved. That's level 1 anyway. To do some exploring that maybe puts them in a position they're not so used to, either as giver or receiver, where they don't have distraction in the way of being silly or discussion or anything like that. That can oftentimes be a very uncomfortable, unfamiliar place for them, but it slows the whole thing down and it starts to help them with a little bit of vulnerability and just get curious, settle in, do something different rather than just let's get to it. And it's skill building for them. And I find that if they can do that, they can actually really enjoy it. And then as they move through the skills, they start to return to that. And that can often be their foreplay as sensate. And then as they move back into partnered penetrative sex, they can employ that and enjoy it.
And by sensate, you mean sensory play, right? Is this what we're talking about?
Sensate Focus is sorry, I should have qualified that. It's a,
I always like to preface this by saying, let's talk in layman's terms, because your terminology is not going to be my terminology. And really nobody listening, or not a lot of people listening, are going to really have the medical background to really understand what these medical terms mean. So if you can just break that down, that would be great.
Yeah. So Sensate Focus is it's a 4-level intervention that was developed by Masters and Johnson in the 50s, I think, actually. You can Google it, and it's 4 levels, and I give it to couples. Level 1 is literally like each partner takes a turn, and for 10 minutes, they're the giver or the receiver. And literally in that role, they are not allowed to touch genitals, but they're allowed over clothes even. They're fully clothed to touch anything outside of genitals. And so usually one of them's maybe wearing yoga pants or something, and they're just touching. They're touching legs, they're touching hair, head, neck, arms, and they're just starting to explore and find spots that they normally would probably not pay attention to. And there's no direction giving. It's not meant to be massage quality. It's not meant to just be caress, touch kind of quality. And so they have to get out of their comfort zone a little bit and get curious and just spend some time with each other. And then they trade. And they don't have to do it back to back, but they can, and sometimes often do. And usually they're more comfortable in one position or the other, because usually they're used to being the giver or used to being the receiver. So when they flip into that opposite position, they're a little clumsy and a little unfamiliar. But they do that for a while, and then eventually they move to the next level and the next level. That includes like a handwriting, meaning like hand over hand, where they can get some guidance from the other. And then eventually it's less close, and eventually it's more guided, and then eventually it is progression. But it's a nice it's a nice scaffolded way to build skill with touch that is asking them to explore the whole body. That includes more, it sounds sense-based touch. So yeah, anybody can Google it and follow the steps. And I think it's a really nice way. It's a nice entryway back in for layman folks to just try. So I do that as an intervention.
Yes. And I often talk about sensory play as being a really great thing to introduce into your sex life. And so this is like a level before that with the clothes on. It's a great way to connect with your partner in a way you've never done before. If you are fully clothed, you're not really like thinking about sex at that moment. You really are honing in on that sensual touch, right? And you may find 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas on your partner's body that you never really realized were super sensitive to touch. It could be perceived as sensual touch.
So places that are tender, it could be the neck, it could be the sacrum, it could be the wrist, or there's all kinds of spots that can be really erotic and beautiful and soft, and the inner thighs, all of those are quite sensual.
Absolutely. And until you actually practice that, you will never know what those areas on your partner are. So don't we all want to know these things about our partners? I think it's a great place to start for sure. Great tip. And I know you mentioned vulnerability in there. And so let's just jump in and let's talk about vulnerability and why it's so important to really build that connection with your partner.
Yeah, so vulnerability is the gold. And I think that it's like obvious, and yet I'm surprised at how many couples aren't actually tapping into vulnerability. There's this proximity, meaning you're in the same space, and yet you're not really taking your armor off and being vulnerable with one another, because that puts you at risk for looking foolish or getting your heart broken, or I don't know, eventually the ultimate fear, I think, is humiliation. And that's in the everyday, but that's also certainly in the bedroom. So if you tell them you like this kinky thing, or if you make sounds while you're having sex, or if invite them in to do this thing that you really like and they reject you, or it's not often logical, like if you really say it out loud, but there's this fear of, if I show who I am and what I want, you're going to reject me, or I'm going to die of humiliation. But it actually probably won't happen. But in our back brain, we're like, I can't say that thing. I can't do that thing. But if you do it, boy, it can like really make the relationship deepen. It can make you so much closer because you're being accepted for this thing as you are, that you want. And that person knows you and accepts you and wants you, even though you've shown this piece. So that's pretty cool.
Yes. And I just think about trying to be our true authentic selves, right? And if we are always worried about being vulnerable with our partners and not showing that vulnerability, we're never going to really truly be authentic, right? And that is the whole entire goal, is to really fully be your authentic self with your partner. Tell them what your wants and needs are. Tell them what you like and don't like, what those kinks are that you may like, that you may be a little bit shy about sharing. And these conversations are a little bit difficult to have. They're not easy to just jump in and say, hey, I have a kink and I want to tell you about it. But if you truly want to have a fulfilling sex life and an amazing sex life, you need to be able to share this information with your partner. So let's talk about sex toys, because that's one of those tricky things that people sometimes feel is hard to introduce to a partner. And so let's talk about that in specifically, and how do we encourage our clients to introduce those toys that really get us there, that really can help our sex lives be more fulfilling.
Yeah. It reminds me of that Sex and the City episode called Secret Single Behavior. It's, like you're starting to date somebody new, or when you've got this thing you love, but you're like, how do I tell them? Toys are wonderful. And I think that partners should not be intimidated by them. They're not instead of, they're in addition to. And
it's a great point.
I think they can enhance. And it's not It shouldn't feel like a competition. It's wonderful. And I think it should hopefully feel like intriguing. What do you love about that toy? Tell me more about it. Tell me why it feels so good to you, because it's a roadmap of like your desire. So understanding why that toy turns you on. Is it the way that it can touch you in particular? Is it the angle? Is it the speed? Is it the way it can be inside of you? Is it the touch of it? Can we use it together? Can I watch you use it? Like, how can we incorporate this? Feeling like it's just information, it's just enhancement is a more useful approach to meeting a toy.
Yeah, I love this. I love that you're like talking about really building curiosity, but very specifically, like what exactly is it that you love about that toy? Because it's going to tell me where you like to be stimulated, right? And so building that curiosity. And when you're talking about choosing a partner, right? And maybe you've already chosen one and you've been married for a long time and now you're trying to build this. But really, for many people that are not in long-term marriages and that are building relationships, new relationships, thinking about when you have these conversations, whether your partner is open to these conversations or not, because really you want to choose a partner that is going to want to fulfill you in the bedroom, that is going to want to pleasure you. And thinking about that as you're going through these sort of early on steps, right? To really creating that conversation early on, because I think it's so important to have these conversations early on if you're starting a new relationship, because if you wait for years and years, and maybe you weren't comfortable back then and now you're in a marriage and you may not be happy in your sex life or whatever, but if you're not having these conversations early on in relationships, you may be wasting a lot of time and years, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And hopefully both of your pleasures should be important.
Yes.
And it's not a competition. It's not a competition with a toy. It's not a competition with each other. It's just, let's figure this out for both of us. And it's this like, both of us get to have it. And so we should both be in service of that, and let's figure it out. That should be the spirit, hopefully, of it. And if you like it this way and I like it that way, and whatever works, and let's facilitate that to make it happen for us. I think it is a good attitude.
Definitely. And now let's talk a little bit about, because I know that you work with couples that have issues with maybe sexual desire, or there's some kind of dissatisfaction. And I work a lot with clients who have sexual function issues, such as erectile dysfunction, or its female equivalent, which is decreased sensitivity and dryness. So I want to just like delve into that a little bit more. And like, how would you encourage a couple to say that has some kind of dysfunction, right? To really introduce those toys that can really help. One example that I gave was a man who has erectile dysfunction, and maybe introducing a dildo or even a strap-on to really still be able to have that penetrative sex that maybe they want to engage in, but can't do in that moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I talked about this a little bit offline, and I have actually done that intervention with a couple, and they seemed a bit shocked. And I work with queer couples, and that's an intervention we use all the time. Is strap-ons are pretty common, and they're a great option for those that want penetrative sex. Now, with a heterosexual couple where they're having erectile dysfunction, where the man is not able to attain or maintain an erection, the thought of strapping on a dildo probably feels pretty shocking. And yet it's super practical. It totally works. It's totally there. If visually he wants to feel like he has an erection, if he wants the sensation of thrusting, and obviously he's not going to feel from a sensory standpoint quite the same because he doesn't feel the internal sensation, but he gets the visual, he gets that. So it does serve that. And if she really wants the sensation of internal feeling full and that kind of thing, it's really nice. It's a great option. I think that you just have to get emotionally over the fact that it's not your organ per se. I don't think it's a big deal, but yeah, you got to get over that part. And men can sometimes be really attached to their unit. But I don't know. It's funny because men are choosy about that, because they're not choosy about using a doll. I don't know why they don't have a problem putting their penis into an object. So I don't know why they'd have a problem strapping on an object. I don't know why they get picky about it in those certain contexts. But I do think that can be a great workaround, because more and more men, as they age, erectile dysfunction is just part of the aging process. And it's also a byproduct of certain medications. It's just a reality for a lot of men. And also, it's not game over necessarily if you can't attain a full erection. But working with what you've got is part of the aging process for both men and women. So sometimes it's about lube, and sometimes it's about doing something besides penetration.
Absolutely. Thinking about sex as not just penetration, because that's like this much of it, right? It's such a small portion of sex. Sex is like such a huge umbrella of different options, right? And the penetration is just a small part. And if you think about women, 95% of women needing external genital stimulation in order to orgasm, right? And you're only focused on the penetration, we're missing out on a lot of sensuality and a lot of displeasure. So I love that you say that it can be like not perceived as necessarily something that people want to explore, but it is very practical. You're absolutely right. It's so
I'm like, your fingers still work, your mouth still works. I'm like, and there's lots and lots of, depending on what's hurting, right? There's lots of receptors in your penis, and they're like, like
right. The penis, even if it's not erect, still has sensation. So you can still play with that organ as well, and not leave it to just be dangling there for the whole entire experience without giving it any attention, right? Because it still will feel good if the man is not able to get hard. But if you think about just penetrative sex by itself, it's just such a small portion of sex itself. When you think about the prevalence of erectile dysfunction, and 20% of men in their 20s already have some form of erectile dysfunction, and it goes up 10% per decade. So 50% of men in their 50s will experience erectile dysfunction, and it just continues to go up, right? And so it's so important to like really think about that, because as we get older, the way that we have sex, the way that we play in the bedroom is going to be different as we get older. Do you want to just jump in and talk about that a little bit? And I know that you've mentioned that it's just like a reality, but there are also treatments for erectile dysfunction and its female equivalent, which is, like I mentioned before, decreased vaginal sensitivity and dryness. And that is a treatment that I do in my practice. It's called acoustic wave therapy, and it helps to bring more blood flow to the area. And I'm not going to go into the details of that because I've talked about it many times in the past. I just want you to comment on that.
Yeah, I think men, it's interesting. I actually have a new couple that I've been seeing only a few times, and they just came in because of his erectile dysfunction. He's 80. And he's like, I'm just starting to have some erectile dysfunction. And I'm like, you're just starting to have erectile dysfunction? I'm like, you're 80. And she said,
a lot of times it's like when they admit to the fact that, because a lot of times men will have erectile dysfunction issues for many years and won't admit to the fact that they do until they're 80.
I was like, I can't believe it's taken this long. I said, you're incredible. And I said, that's good for you. Because most men are having it certainly in their 70s, probably in their 60s, but like certainly in their 70s. For you to get to 80 and just be starting to have issues, good on you. Prioritizing your sex life. I am so proud of you. And let's talk about sex. Let's more broadly define sex, right? Because yes, it's important. And I understand that there's all this emotional tie to your penis working. And also, let's talk about the larger conversation, because she's gone through menopause at this point and she's had to recalibrate. That's like a good word to just this whole larger picture. Let's recalibrate as our bodies are changing. What can we do now? Do we need lubrication? Do we need more rest? Do we need to have some, if we're women, estrogen? Do we need topical estrogen? Do we need hip openers? What do we need to actually have our body feel like it can accommodate what we're trying to do? We're not 20 anymore. We're not young and spry in the same way, but we still have interest and energy, but maybe it's more cuddle energy. Maybe we also just need some stretching and some cream, but it's also, don't be mad at your body that it won't do what it used to do. But also, sometimes your body needs some conditioning to get it back to what it can do.
And that's where physical therapy comes in for these types of issues that you're talking about. Absolutely. And just being open-minded about creating a space for new exploration. It doesn't always have to be the same old. We need variety. Variety is the spice of life. And for sure in sex, that is true too. And so not getting so stuck on like your previous interpretation of how your amazing sex life was, but really expanding that to include other things that can really enhance your sex life as well.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
When you think about your future, you know what calls to you. Meaningful work, happiness, growth, and sharing these values with others. But how will you find all of that? There are many paths forward, including one you may not have considered. The military provides countless opportunities to pursue your calling, where you can be part of something bigger than yourself while still being yourself and having the future you want. You have a calling, we have an answer. Learn more at todaysmilitary.com.
So let's just talk a little bit about aftercare, what I like to call aftercare and what you like to call pillow talk, right? And so let's just talk about why that is so important for having a healthy sex life.
Yeah. I find that depending on how people are wired, this is more of an attachment function, but some people really enjoy the sex and some people really enjoy what happens post-sex, right? That oftentimes there's a flood of hormones, but really they're looking forward to the cuddling that happens and the benefits that sort of string, not just in the hours after sex or the minutes, but the week, the whole week. There's a softening, there is a relational shift that happens between the couple or the throuple or whoever, is happening. But after sex, the edges get softened between the people. And there is like a letting go of some of the stuff that you might fight about otherwise, or the conflict that might exist. And it's really nice because you shared this thing together and you have been vulnerable in one way or another. And there's just a shift in the relational dynamic that can be really special. And it seems to have this kind of longer effect that serves the relationship.
Yes. And it's so important to really take that time afterwards to really connect on an emotional level, because a lot of times that doesn't necessarily always happen. So I think aftercare is so important, really giving yourself that time to really, maybe even saying, hey, I really loved this thing that you did, or this place that you touched me. It can be part of the learning experience of like really teaching your partner what you enjoyed during that episode and taking that to the next round.
Some people feel like it's like a recap or because I do have some partners that are like, I don't want to talk about it. And other partners, more the anxious partners, want to hear what worked, what didn't work. And I can understand that if you're wondering how that played for you, if it isn't completely clear, then I think it is helpful to say, you don't have to do it play by play, but generally, if I tried something new, did it work? And what did you like? Give me the bullet points from this thing and tell me how that experience played out for you.
Yeah, I think it's a great time to have these conversations. And it doesn't have to be like a blow by blow highlights reel, right? It can just be like the one thing that you really were like, ooh, I really liked to be touched in that spot. And I never realized it before. And so let's remember that for next time, because I really enjoyed that. And something just popped into my mind while you were talking about like the more you have, the more you want sort of thing. And I don't even know if that's like a medical thing or not, but I find that when I have really amazing sex, I want it more often. Is that like a real thing, or is that just me?
I will say that like people ask about masturbation, for example, should I be masturbating, or if I masturbate, is that going to kill my desire for the rest of the week? I actually use it sometimes as a warm up for people, because I think that, yeah, it's kind of like you crave what you eat a little bit. And I think that's true. So yeah, if you're having sex, you're more likely to have I think it begets more sex if it's a positive experience. Yeah, it does warm you up. I think that's true.
I love that you bring up masturbation here too, because there's a relationship that you have with yourself, right? And then there's a relationship that you have with your partner. And just because you're in a partnered relationship doesn't mean that you have to abandon the relationship and the sensual relationship that you have with yourself. And masturbation is a great tool for what you just said. And also for men who do experience erectile dysfunction, to really try to increase that blood flow. And I often will recommend that my patients get a penis pump so that they can use it every day in order to really increase that blood flow on a daily basis. When you practice something, you get better at it, right? And if you're not practicing, or if you're only practicing once a week or once every other week or whatever, you're not going to really have improvements. So you have to really hone those skills on a personal level too. And for women, it's so key to understand what gets you there, right? What really gets you to have an orgasm. And if you don't know that, there's no way that you can translate that information to the bedroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you have to know your own body first. You have to turn yourself on. And not that it's solely your responsibility in partner play, but it certainly helps. Because if you understand physically, position-wise, where you need to be, and then also if you can coming into it, like we talked about lingerie and that type of thing, but then also partner-wise, you understand it's just so much easier than putting all the onus on your partner, because yeah. And so I think if you've touched yourself, if you've played with toys, if you've maybe, like I've got one client who likes to read erotica before she goes into partner play, right? That's part of it. Some people watch porn. Some people do some fantasy stuff, role playing, that type of thing. But whatever it is, whatever your thing is, then just do that. But knowing what it is to turn yourself on and doing that and sharing that with your partner, if you're willing, I think can be really empowering. Yeah.
Absolutely. And erasing the shame around all of it, right? Because shame it shouldn't even be included in the bedroom at all, right? We should just throw all of that out and just really focus on enjoying ourselves. So I want to just jump into our role play at this point. So this season I'm doing a role play and we're talking about safety, okay, in many different ways.
So I'm going to play the guy in a heterosexual couple, and I'm going to play the guy that can't attain an erection, and you're going to be my female partner.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because I honestly see the scenario with some frequency. Yeah.
Yes. So let's do this one. Okay. And action.
So we're in the bedroom. We're trying to get there. And I'm like, oh, it's not working. Forget it. We should just bail out. This is not going to happen. I can't believe I can't do it. I'm useless in this.
Oh, wow. It's okay. Let's not use the term useless to describe ourselves, right? We don't need to beat ourselves up. This is just something that happens to people. It's a common thing. So why don't we talk about what we can do to explore without focusing on the actual erection? Let's just do that.
But like, how am I supposed to be a partner in this? Or I'm not a man if I can't keep my dick hard.
That's not what I'm looking at when I look at you. You are a man in so many ways, and you take care of me in so many ways. And so I'm not judging you by the hardness of your penis as to whether you're a man or not. And so I want you to not think of our intimate life that way, because there are other things that we can do.
Like what?
So why don't you lay down, and why don't I just give you like a sensual massage? Why don't we start from there? And then maybe you can do the same for me, and I can tell you what really turns me on when you touch me.
Are you just doing that to make me not feel so bad about what's happening? Or does that actually like work for you?
my whole body is sensitive. So even though we're not focusing specifically on our genitals, we can still have a lot of sensual touch, and I would love it. No, I'm not doing it just because I love you and I want us to still continue to have a sensual relationship, even if penetrative sex with your penis is not going to be a part of it every time. I don't want to just end it each time this happens. Are you open to exploring in other ways?
Sure. Let's try it. Let's give it a try.
And see.
Yeah.
This is a big
all that way, right? It happens. I wish couples would be willing to try that, because I feel like there's this crestfallen guy that wants to just disappear and eject out of the bedroom instead of being like, all right, let's go to plan B. And plan B, like you just suggested, isn't just pivot and totally focus on her, but stay in to say, I mean, it can be focus on her, but it also can be focus on them together in another way. I love that you suggested that. Yeah.
Yes. And just because the penis isn't getting fully erect doesn't mean that it doesn't have sensation to it. It still feels good to your partner to touch it, oral. It'd still be really a delicious foreplay. And toys, introduce those toys. There's nothing wrong with adding a dildo if you want penetrative sex, or just focusing on oral sex, because really most women need external stimulation to orgasm anyway. So focusing on that can really be a turn on for a man to get their partner there. And that's a big turn on too. It doesn't always have to be ejaculating.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be penetrative sex, but yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to make sure, and thank you so much for doing that role play with me. I always find that role plays are so great to model the kinds of conversations that we really should be having in the bedroom. And a lot of times people are not having those conversations. So it's a great place to model these types of conversations. So I want to make sure that my listeners can find you. Where can we find you?
Absolutely. So pleasureproject.us is home base. That's got my website. That's got my small group intensives. So I lead 6-week group intensives that are live. I've also got a course coming out that is asynchronous, so people can do that on their own time. My podcast is linked on there. I've got articles, and then my psychotherapy is at rivieratherapy.com.
And is the link on the pleasureproject.us?
It's not. So you'd have to go to I have a different website for my therapy. So that's the revieweratherapy.com. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll make sure that we include that in the show notes. Thank you so much for that. And I want to make sure that if my listeners liked this episode, go ahead and copy it right now and share it with somebody that you think would benefit from listening to this conversation. This is really a conversation that so many people are having out there in relationships, and not a lot of people are talking about. So it's a great episode to share. Make sure that if you want to support the show, the best place to support the show is by going to Patreon and subscribing, and for ad-free listening and early episodes. And again, thank you so much for being on the show today, Dr. Kennedy. This was a really fun conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Until next time.